everybody, thanks once again for joining me this afternoon. I really do appreciate it. Right, let's make a start, because we're doing a bit of stenciling and there's a bit of measuring as well today. So I'll go through what we're going to be using. So first off, we're using the Layering Roses. I'm also using some papers from the Christmas Romance paper pad. Okay, so I'm also using the Nested Scalloped and Plain Circles. Again, one of those die sets that you will go to time and time again. And I'm using the second largest scallop and the next one down for that. Then on my original card, I used a sentiment from this set, which was This is a Hug in an Envelope. I'll show you that in a second, but I'm not using that one today. This set came out with the Christmas box kit number 2, I think it was. And I'm using this sentiment. It's not available anymore, this, so I'm sorry for using it, but I just wanted to use this sentiment. And this is where we're headed. So if I open this up, you will see that although it looks like a card that's sort of in a portrait layout, when you open it up, it actually opens up into a landscape layout. And I think that's really clever. You can see I've done a little bit of stenciling on the corner of my piece of card that goes inside, and I'll show you how I did that in a second. But I just thought this was a really clever little card that looks one thing but is actually something else. Now you'll notice on the background here is some roses, and those are from this set. Okay, so I did all my stenciling and then I cut my piece of card accordingly to the size that I needed. Okay, right. The piece that I'm going to be stenciling now is the piece that I'm going to use and cut down to use on my card. Okay, so I wanted to use colours that reflected the colours on the Christmas Romance rose. So if I show you that colour, you see this beautiful colour here. It's not really pink, it's more sort of like a salmony colour, and I was going to go with saltwater taffy, and then I thought, no, it's too peachy, that is. So I actually went with Tattered Rose as my base colour, and I don't know why I don't use this colour more often, because it's a beautiful colour to use. So my base is going to be Tattered Rose. I'm going in quite not heavy but not light, because I'm using some of Lisa's texture card and I'm using the white, so I need to go in heavy enough to fill all that grain in on that card. I mean, it's a beautiful card, and I just think when you stencil onto this textured card, it does give you a really nice effect, and I really like how it looks. And if you look at the original card, I think the texture adds an awful lot to the stenciling. I just think it just gives a really nice finish. So that's number 1, and then we're going in with number 2. And you can see I've gone over my numbers with a Sharpie pen, and it does make a difference. Right, I'm going in here with tea dye, which again is quite a soft colour, but if you see that there, I think it's a really nice match with this Tattered Rose. I think it just gives a really nice soft effect on the rest of the stenciling. I'm using the small stencil brushes because the actual apertures on these roses, and I think the same for the fantasy flowers, they are quite small, so I want to actually get in again onto this textured card with as much colour as I can without going over the top. So these small stencil brushes are perfect for that. Yep, happy with that. Number 2. I mean, it just gives such a soft image, but I just think it reflects the colours on the Christmas Romance paper pad really, really well. Okay, now I've done tea dye, I am going in with quite a dark colour. It might be a little bit scary. This is Vintage Photo and it is quite brown. I'm going to use a different brush. So I'm going on my stencil first to take some of the colour off my brush, and then I'm going in with my Vintage Photo. So I'm pulling the ink off the stencil rather than re-inking the brush in the pad. Okay, because I don't want it, I want the darkness, but I don't want it to overpower the rest of the rose. I just want it to highlight those shadows where it should. And if I show you the two that I've done, I just think that's perfect. I think that's really a really nice effect. So take your ink off your pad, put it onto your stencil, and then bring it off your stencil into your apertures, and that way you'll get a softer coverage but with a darker colour. Okay, I really like that effect. I think it's really really gentle, and you wouldn't think that you'd use such a dark colour as that Vintage Photo, because it is really quite dark. So I'm just going to go in off the edge of my stencil around some of these petals with the tea dye, just to soften off the edges a little bit. It's not a great amount, you probably won't even see it on the camera, but I can see it, and it just takes off that, just softens the edge of those petals, and I just really like the effect. A bit like Lisa was doing with her grey the other night. Right, happy with that. So I've done my stenciling. Now I need to cut that down to fit my card. Okay, you can see that. I really like that. I really like those colours together. I think they really blend nicely together, and they just pick out enough detail. And I think once you've got them on your card, they'll look perfect. So let's just move our little Ultimate friend out of the way, and we're just going to cut this down. So 3 7/8 inch square that we need. And put my little bits out of the way. So this piece is going to go on the front here. Okay. Now then, the rest of the card. So you need 2 pieces of card which measure 4 by 10 1/4. I'm using craft cardstock here. Don't use craft nearly half as much as I should do, but I decided to on this occasion. So you've got 2 pieces that you're going to score at 5 1/2. Okay, so that will give you a slightly longer piece and a slightly shorter piece. And then what you need to do is, on your shorter piece, you need to make a mark at 5/8 down the one side of the card. Okay, so this is going to be the top piece and this is going to be the bottom piece. So you need to score them at 5/8 from the bottom here to the corner. Okay, and then on the other side you mark your 5/8 at the top and score to the corner. Okay, and then burnish them. Now you fold in the triangle part to the outside, so that when you fold it in, it's going to pull out. Okay, and the same with this one. Alright, so that's going to form the basis of your card. Now when you stick these two together, whichever piece is going on the top, just trim a tiny little bit off the edge. Because they both measure the same, if you don't trim a little bit off, they're not going to meet properly. So that when you put your 2 pieces of card together like this, you're going to have a big gap here, and that's not what you want. Okay, so you want these two to meet as near as damn it really. Okay, So I'm now going to glue these two together. Okay, I'm using Lisa's glue because I think this is the best glue out, to be honest. So I'm going to glue on the bottom. So it sealed itself. No, there we go. I'm going to glue along the bottom. Don't need huge amounts with this glue because it does have a really good grab on it. I mean, I used to use loads more than this, but you don't need it with this. Okay, so we're gluing these together. You'll see I've done all my markings so that I get it right, because when I was doing my example I got it wrong, and I cut my pieces of paper and I looked at them and I thought, well, they're not going to fit because I've cut them wrong. So you just have to be careful when you're making your marks on your paper and your card, okay, so that you get it at the right, you get your creases in the right places, so that when you close this it's going to come together like that. Okay, with me so far? Right, next thing we need to do, you need to cut 2 pieces of designer paper which measures 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Let me just double check that. Inches, 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. Okay, and these 2 pieces are going to cover these pieces of your card here, and then when you close it they're also going to cover these pieces of your card here. So when you make your marks on your card, on this piece of card, to cut it, obviously you're using 2, and if I show you the ones that I've already cut, and I've written on here which ones they are so that I stick them in the right place. So I've got outside right and outside left, okay, outside right, outside left, yeah, and then inside right and inside left. So these 2 go on this side. Now when you're marking your pieces of paper, if I put them both the same way up, you need to mark them on opposite sides, if you can see. So you need to make a mark at 5/8 on this side, on the left hand side at the top, and then you need to mark 5/8 on the right hand side at the bottom. Okay, and that's going to give you your 2 pieces for the inside. But then your pieces for the outside you want to do opposite to that. So you want to mark down at 5/8 on the right hand side at the top, and 5/8 from the bottom on the left hand side. Okay, so that gives you your 4 pieces that are going to decorate the inside of your card and the outside of your card. So I'm going to add these in. Outside, I'm going to do the inside first, inside right. See, they will only fit one way, okay, and they are slightly matted and layered on the inside of the card and the outside of the card, okay, because you want it to be a little bit interesting. So you want to have a little bit of matting and layering, but not a huge amount. Okay, so I'll put that piece down there. And you see I've got a very tiny mat on that piece there. And that's what you're going to get all the way round with these pieces. Okay, so it's a really tiny mat on here. Okay, so inside left, this one's going here. Okay, so that one's going on the inside here. And then I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to do the outside on both the front and the back. And you can see they will only fit one way. So that's that one done, and last piece there. I mean, it's quite straightforward once you've worked out where you're cutting. It is quite a straightforward card to make. Okay, I mean, it's not taking very long at all, really, is it? I mean, I think the stenciling probably took longer than actually making the card. So, okay, so there I've got my 2 pieces. Now then, the inside of the card, I added one of the little roses onto the corner of my inside piece, just to tie it all in together. And I literally just used that one piece. So I masked it off with some post-it notes so that I was only using one piece of that stencil. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's achievable, and I think it's worth the effort, because it will just tie everything in really nicely. And I think that's always nice when you open a card and you can see a reflection of what's on the front on the inside. So okay, so that's my inside piece, so that's where I'm going to write my sentiment. Okay, now then, this piece here is going on here like this. So I obviously need to cut this down the middle. Okay, so I'm literally just going to cut that on the diagonal, making sure that I cut it the right way. So I'm going that way, because the last thing you want to do is do all that stenciling and then put it in your cutter wrong and cut it on the wrong diagonal. But I'm pretty sure that's right. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so all my flowers are the right way round. And that's the only thing I would say is be careful. If you're using a directional pattern on your papers that you're using, then make sure that you bear that in mind when you're doing your cutting and your scoring, because you want the papers to be the right way up. So when you look at this card, if you've got script on the back here, you want the script to be the right way up. Okay, so you just need to bear that in mind when you're adding your papers and cutting, so that you don't cut it on the wrong direction, and then you'll need to cut it again then, and then you'll be wasting your papers. Okay, just add that there like that, and then the other piece on the top. Okay, so that piece is going on there like so. And as I've said with Lisa's glue before, you have got a tiny bit of wiggle room, but not a huge amount, because it's such good glue, it will grip straight away. Okay, so now we come into this bit. So this is your closure. So I've got my twine here. Now I want my twine to go all the way around the card, but I only want to leave enough to just fasten it this end. I can trim it off afterwards. So I'm just going to hold that in place. Make sure it's in the middle if you can, because then it won't look odd when you've fastened your card. And all I'm using is 2 tiny pieces of tape. This is red liner tape. It's not going to make any difference that it's double-sided, because I'm not taking the other side off. Okay, so I just want to hold that in place, because this is going to hold the rest of it in place. Okay, so I've also used the same rose on my centerpiece here. So again, all I've done is slip this underneath the stencil, mask off the pieces that I don't need, and just stencil this piece here. And then I've added my sentiment at the top. Okay, so I'm not going to add this to this now. I'm going to add that afterwards so that I can get it straight. But I have added 3D pads on the back of here, because I want the sentiment, I want this piece that's got the sentiment on to sit proud of the rest of the card. And remember, you only need pads on half of this. Okay, right, so you've only got your pads on one half of this, because obviously you don't want it on both halves, otherwise it won't open properly. So I'm going to take my backing off my pads, and then I'm going to place this on here. Now I don't know whether you can see, but I've actually put 2 little pencil lines on my craft card here. I don't know whether you can see that. Yeah, you can. Okay, and that's to help me line it up on my card here, because I want to get it in the right place. So I'm making sure it's in the middle, and then I'm adding it down onto my card. Okay, so this bit is the only bit that's going to stick. Okay, and of course it's also secured my twine underneath. Now I can add this and know that I can put it straight. So this is what I didn't do with this one. So do as I say, not as I do, and it'll be fine. So then I can add my sentiment on the top and know that it's in exactly the right place. Perfect. Now I'm just going to do what I always do, and I'm going to just add 3 little pearls to my card just to finish it off. I didn't do that on the original one, not for any other reason than I didn't think about it at the time, to be honest. So I'm just adding these 3. So I've put my pearls on the front, and then all I need to do is just fasten my card off to finish it off. And it's a bit fiddly, this twine, because it's quite a stiff twine, but once you've fastened it a couple of times, it does have a bit of give in it. So then I'm just going to trim that off both ends, just to give me still enough to be able to fasten it with. But I think once you've mastered the where you're measuring, which sides you're putting your score lines, because that's the important bit. It's so easy to measure the wrong side, and once you've scored it, you can't use it really, because the score lines will show up and they just don't look right. So these are self-adhesive, and as I say, they match the papers fabulously. So just wanted to tie everything in perfectly and just add 2 little ones in here just to finish it off, which I think they do really nicely, because obviously the colours all tie in beautifully. So it's nice when it's closed, and it's twice as nice when you open it. So there you go everybody, there's 2 trifold cards with a twist, and I think you'll agree that they do look really, really cute. So thanks once again for joining me. I really do appreciate you joining me every week. I'll see you all again very soon. Have a fabulous week. Bye for now.